Oh, thank you so much. That would be great. Martin,
So we'll get started in a minute here. Everybody say 1 minute.
I don't want to offer for your cup. I know, but just in case you want to put it up again. Sorry, Bookie.
Welcome everybody to this policy briefing on the Swiss Peace Initiative for Nagorno Karabakh. My name is Mark Malash. I'm the Republican Staff Director for Congressman Chris Smith, who's co-chairman of the Town Land Coast Human Rights Commission. I've been asked to introduce our panelists today. The House is not in session this week, so the members are not here. I'm here then in personam Chris. I wouldn't say in personam Christi, but the joke does come up now and again, and I know people in this room will get that one. During the Artsakh crisis, the blockade, invasion, and ethnic cleansing of this ancient Armenian land, Congressman Smith chaired 4 congressional hearings on this ethnic cleansing of Artsakh. He was always careful to maintain that the ethnic Armenians have a human right to live in this land where Armenians have lived now for thousands of years. Nothing can ever take that away. However distant or unlikely that goal may seem at this moment, it is something that belongs to the Artsakh Armenians. It's part of their dignity, and it's important that we remember it, insist on it, and as we'll do today, maintain it and explain it. Every people has the right to live on its land in peace and freedom, speaking its language, practicing its faith, and living in its traditions. And the Armenians of Artsakh give every evidence of being willing to live in peace with Azerbaijanis on this land. It is the government of Azerbaijan in its extraordinarily vicious nationalist incitement campaign that will not allow it to do so. We're focused today on recent efforts undertaken by the Swiss Parliament through the Swiss Peace Initiative for Nagorno Karabakh. This parliamentary group, which initiated international dialogue on the right of return through multilateral institutions, including the OSCE. We'll hear firsthand from Swiss parliamentarians leading the global effort to establish a multilateral negotiation platform to ensure the right of return for Artsakh Armenians, and from representatives of Artsakh's forcibly displaced Armenian population. The briefers will address the ongoing challenges faced by the Artsakh refugee community, Azerbaijan's ongoing threats against sovereign Armenia and continued violation of Armenian rights through the destruction of cultural heritage and civilian property, and the need to ensure a just, durable, and dignified peace in the South Caucasus predicated on accountability, justice, and respect for fundamental human rights. Now I'll introduce our briefers. Eric von Tobel is, stand up for a moment. Eric von Tobel is a founding co-chair of the Swiss Peace Initiative for Nagorno Karabakh. He's a member of the Swiss National Parliament. He is from the canton of Zurich. Mr. von Tobel initiated the successful parliamentary motion calling for the Swiss government to convene a peace forum involving Azerbaijan and representatives of the ethnically cleansed Armenian Christian community of Nagorno-Karabakh with a view to creating conditions for the displaced to return to their homes. With the passage of this parliamentary motion, its provisions have become the policy of the Swiss government. Von Tobel is the co-chair of a cross-party committee of 19 Swiss parliamentarians who are committed to raising support in Switzerland and abroad for this Swiss initiative for peace in Nagorno Karabakh. His personal visits to Armenia and his engagement there with the forcibly displaced Armenian Christians of Nagorno Karabakh led him to action on their behalf. We'll also hear from Lucas Reimann. Could you stand, raise your hand for a moment? Thank you. Lucas Reimann is also a founding co-chair of the Swiss Peace Initiative for Nagorno Karabakh. He's also a member of the Swiss National Parliament. He's from the canton of St. Gallen. In Parliament, he's been an advocate of the fundamental rights of Syriac Christians, who, together with the Armenian Christians, were the victims of Turkey's First World War. His name is also closely associated with defense of Switzerland's sovereignty, neutrality, and humanitarian traditions, and opposes EU membership of Switzerland. Reimann is a member of the cross-party committee of 19 Swiss parliamentarians who are committed to raising support in Switzerland and abroad for this peace initiative for Nagorno-Karabakh. We'll also hear from Vartan Oskanian. He chairs the Committee for the Defense of the Fundamental Rights of the People of Nagorno-Karabakh, the Artsakh Right of Return Committee. From 1998 to 2008, he served as the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Armenia. While in office, Oskanian was at the center of negotiations aimed at peaceful resolution of the conflict between Azerbaijan and the Armenian Christian community of Nagorno-Karabakh within the framework of the OSCE's Minsk Group. He led the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as the Republic of Armenia pivoted closer to the EU and NATO while retaining membership of the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Following Azerbaijan's ethnic cleansing of Nagorno-Karabakh, Oskanian was elected by its exiled parliamentary members to head this Committee for Defense of the Fundamental Rights of the People of Nagorno-Karabakh. We also have today for you John Eibner. He is president of Christian Solidarity International, a Swiss-based Christian human rights organization that fights for religious liberty and human dignity and assists victims of persecution in many countries around the world. For over 3 decades, he's directed field-based research and human rights advocacy campaigns on behalf of endangered religious communities in Sudan, Nigeria, Nagorno-Karabakh, and the broader Middle East. Dr. Eibner has served as CSI's main representative at the United States Nations in Geneva and has appeared before the U.S. House of Representatives subcommittees on the Middle East and Africa and before the Congressional Human Rights Caucus. He co-wrote, together with Baroness Cox, the report Ethnic Cleansing in Progress, War in Nagorno-Karabakh. He has briefed policymakers at the White House, State Department, and has written for many of the leading newspapers of the world. I believe we will hear today from our briefers, first from Mr. Eibner, and from Mr. von Tobel, Mr. Reimann, and Mr. Oskanian. Thank you all very much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm really very grateful to Mark for his long service here on the Hill, dealing with many of the issues that CSI has been dealing with, important human rights and religious freedom issues. And of course, a special tribute to his chief, Chairman Smith, with whom CSI has worked for many years. I believe that even before I joined CSI in 1990, Chairman Smith made some of his first foreign journeys, human rights journeys, in collaboration with CSI to China and Romania. A word about my own personal involvement in this issue. It began in 1991 when I made my first visit to Nagorno-Karabakh. At that time, we had to break a blockade at the time of ethno-religious cleansing operations conducted by Azerbaijani special forces at the time of the collapse of the Soviet Union. That was during the First Karabakh War. The Armenians emerged victorious. There was a ceasefire in 1994. And that established an uneasy peace for many years. And then there was the Second Karabakh War in 2020. Much of the region was then lost to Azerbaijan. And then in September 2023, Azerbaijan launched a military assault as the climax of a 9-month military blockade, the aim of which was to weaken the civilian population by starvation. The result was the ethno-religious cleansing of Armenian Christians from their historic homeland, a homeland where they have been for really into ancient times, and it bears repeating that the Armenian Christian community is really the first Christian nation. Armenia was the first nation to adopt Christianity as a state religion in 301 AD. Happy to answer questions and get into discussion about the wars and the situation, but I'd like to very quickly highlight a few points that perhaps we can get into later, and some of my colleagues will be addressing some of them in their contributions. So I'd like to start by posing two questions that I think we need to keep in mind as we address this issue. And the first is, does the United States believe that a favorable and lasting peace in the South Caucasus, a region of growing geopolitical and economic significance, can be built on the basis of ethno-religious cleansing? It's an important question we need to keep in mind as policymakers. If the answer is no to religious cleansing as a final solution to the long-standing conflict between the Armenian Christian nation on the one hand and the Muslim Turkic Azerbaijani nation on the other, then should the United States provide support for Switzerland's peace initiative for Nagorno Karabakh? Second question. Believe that ethnic cleansing is not the basis for a lasting peace. What are the United States' major interests in the region? And there are really three that can be simply put. One has been a geopolitical one, to diminish the influence of Russia and Iran in the region and replacing it with that of the United States and its Western allies. This has been our grand strategy since the collapse of the Soviet Union. The second is opening the region to economic development. The Armenians stand in the way of open transportation links to Central Asia. There are the resources of Central Asia that are there that are not fully exploited, and this is a geopolitical, economic interest of the United States. And then another one, which probably doesn't feature so prominently or as prominently as we would wish here in town, and that is simply religious freedom and other fundamental human rights. We pay lip service to religious freedom being important. We pay lip service to fundamental human rights being an important part of the world order that we would like to have. The question is, are we going to implement them? Are we going to make human rights and religious freedom a part of United States diplomacy to try to solve this long-lasting problem, long-standing problem between Armenia and Azerbaijan? So what has the policy of the United States been towards Nagorno Karabakh? Since 1992, the United States has worked through the Minsk Group, the OSCE, to negotiate the final settlement of the conflict. What I gather, and again our colleague Vartan Oskanian will be able to say more, the United States did not promote this with great energy and any vision. The attitude of the United States for years was they will support whatever the two parties agree to. And the two parties didn't agree. So there was nothing came out of this Minsk group of the OSCE. Probably much could come out of it if there was American energy put into it. And among the agreed principles of that process were the non-use of force, territorial integrity, and the equal rights and self-determination of peoples. That was the peace process then. But only 5 days before Azerbaijan launched its final military assault in September 2023, Yuri Kim, the acting Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, robustly declared before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the United States will not countenance any effort or action, short-term or long-term, to ethnically cleanse or commit other atrocities against the Armenian people of Nagorno-Karabakh. Yet Azerbaijan committed ethno-religious cleansing, and it did so with impunity. The United States did countenance it, fact of the matter. While neither the United States nor any other power took punitive action against Azerbaijan, the United States, together with the rest of the international community, including Azerbaijan, has accepted publicly in principle the right of the forcibly displaced community to return to their homes in Karabakh. Nobody is disputing that they should be able to return home. The Swiss Peace Initiative offers a Swiss-sponsored mechanism for dialogue between Azerbaijan and the ethnically cleansed community, their representatives, to talk about how they might be able to come home, to create a platform for dialogue. It's nothing more or nothing less than that. It's not a grand strategy for solving the problems of the region, but there's a recognition that unless this problem is solved, there will be no lasting peace in the region. So if that is the goal of the United States, we really should be looking at this very seriously and give support for the Swiss Peace Initiative. And the two key conditions, of course, of return are security and respect for fundamental human rights of the returnees. Switzerland is a neutral country with vast experience as a mediator, is well suited to fulfill this function. Switzerland will have additional instruments at its disposal in 2026 when it becomes the chair of the OSCE. But Switzerland is not likely to succeed without support from the United States, the leading power within the NATO-Euro sphere, to which both Azerbaijan and Armenia belong. During the 2024 election campaign, President Trump offered a ray of hope when he declared 120,000 Armenian Christians were horrifically persecuted and forcibly displaced in Artsakh, Nagorno Karabakh. When I am president, I will protect persecuted Christians. I will work to stop the violence and ethnic cleansing, and we will restore peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The Swiss Peace Initiative for Nagorno-Karabakh offers exceptional possibilities for the United States to make good on President Trump's pledge and thereby contribute to a durable peace that will benefit the United States and all of the peoples of the region, regardless of their ethnic or religious identity. It is also an opportunity for the United States to help reverse the ethno-religious cleansing of one of the world's oldest Christian communities and halt the erosion of the region's religious pluralism. The United States leadership is crucial for success. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, that's my very first speech in English and abroad, titled From Promise to Peace, the birth of the Swiss Peace Initiative. It's a miracle for me that we are gathered here in Washington, D.C. today. This miracle began in January 2024, when I was given responsibility within our parliamentary group for matters concerning Armenia and Nagorno Karabakh in the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Swiss National Council. In autumn 2024, my wife and I were deciding where we wanted to go on vacation. I suggested, let's go to Armenia and see what it looks like. I've never been there before. And what is happening there. During our trip, we met representatives from Nagorno Karabakh as well as refugees. They said to me, please do something so that we can return, so that we may see our cemeteries and schools again. One woman showed me a video of her former house, now occupied by another family. That sight broke my heart. That's when I knew I must and want act. I promised her and the refugees that I would. 1 week after our return, I submitted a motion in the Foreign Affairs Committee. The goal, an international peace forum for the displaced people of Nagorno Karabakh. To my surprise, most members of the committee supported the motion. But there was also opposition. One person told me, "Eric, withdraw this motion. It doesn't stand a chance in Parliament." But withdrawal was not an option for me. I had given my word in Armenia. The displacement of over 100,000 people is a clear violation of international law. We simply accept that. If we simply accept that and do not even offer our good offices, we lose our credibility. But the motion passed in both chambers of Parliament with support from across the political spectrum. That is how the Swiss Peace Initiative was born. It does not call for sanctions or intervention. It calls for a table, a place for dialogue, where even the displaced have a seat. We must act now. As Foreign Minister Marco Rubio recently warned, there is a real risk of renewed conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Diplomacy is the only path forward. I am the representative of a Christian party. Freedom of religion is as important to me as it is to you and to President Trump. He promised to end the ethnic cleansing of Christians and to restore peace. He speaks to my heart. The Swiss Peace Initiative offers the US a chance to support peace without taking on direct risk. We in Switzerland are neutral and have the necessary expertise and credibility to organize this forum, this peace forum. What we need now is broad international support, above all from the United States. Our interests and values align. We want peace and stability in the region. I therefore ask you, the US Congress and administration, to publicly endorse the Swiss Peace Initiative. Let us help Azerbaijan and the displaced population engage in constructive dialogue without resorting to violence or international litigation. With your support, we can reaffirm religious freedom and cooperation as cornerstones of peace and prosperity in the region. For more details, please see the one-page summary available on the table or even on your seats. Thank you.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, in September 2023, Azerbaijan invaded the disputed territory of Nagorno Karabakh following a 9-month blockade. State-sponsored starvation and military violence, reminiscent of the Great Armenian Genocide, forced 120,000 Armenians to flee. This fact has been confirmed by the International Court of Justice and by the Freedom House. The forced expulsion of the Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians caused great dismay in Switzerland. I'm serving in the Swiss Parliament for more than 16 years, and it's very rare that all parties together, we have almost 10 different parties in the Swiss parliament, that all parties together fight for one subject, and in this case it was the fact. Both chambers of the Swiss parliament therefore voted by a large majority in favor of the motion 244259, initially proposed by my colleague Eric, who is, I have to point out, from a different party than me, but that shows how big the support of this initiative is. It instructs the Swiss government to organize an international peace forum on the Nagorno Karabakh conflict to facilitate an open dialogue between Azerbaijan and representatives of the Nagorno Karabakh Armenians. The aim of the dialogue is to create conditions for the safe return of the expelled Armenian population. On May 2025, the cross-party committee Swiss Peace Initiative for Nagorno-Karabakh was founded in Bern. The function of this 19-people committee is to support the Swiss Foreign Ministry as it strives to facilitate a sustainable political solution to the conflict between Azerbaijan and the displaced Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh. The expulsion of the Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians is a serious violation of international humanitarian law. The Swiss Foreign Ministry explicitly lists attacks against the civilian population and the unlawful expulsion of the civilian population as war crimes on its website on international humanitarian law. The expulsion of the Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians violated two binding orders of the International Court of Justice. Following the expulsion, the ICJ also stated in a binding order of November 17, 2023, that Azerbaijan must ensure that persons who left Nagorno-Karabakh after September 19, 2023 and wish to return to Nagorno-Karabakh can do so in a safe, unhindered and expeditious manner. Before the expulsion, the population lived in the de facto Republic of Artsakh, which despite its lack of recognition was protected under international law. Azerbaijan violated these obligations through blockade, violence and expulsion. In such cases, under international law, the right of self-determination of the affected population outweighs the territorial integrity of an aggressor. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE, can play a crucial role in fulfillment of the Swiss Peace Initiative. In the world's largest regional security organization with 57 participating states. One of the OSCE aims is to secure peace and post-conflict reconstruction. Switzerland will chair, as it has been said, the OSCE for the third time in 2026. In view of the current security challenges, Switzerland reaffirms that dialogue and cooperation are essential to find sustainable solutions for our future. The chair of the OSCE offers mechanisms to enable Switzerland and other member states, USA of course is one of the most important, but if not the most important member state of the OSCE, to support the implementation of the Swiss Peace Initiative for Nagorno-Karabakh. Switzerland's long-standing tradition of neutrality and mediation unlikely qualifies it to promote a credible and sustainable peace process that prioritizes human security and justice for the victims of displacement. The OSCE Minsk group, made up of the United States, Russia and France, is mandated to finding a peaceful resolution to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. It was established in 1992 following a decision by the OSCE during a meeting in Helsinki. The United States can help revitalize the Minsk group and ensure that it contributes to return of the forcibly displaced persons to their homeland. That's what it requires for a lasting peace. We cannot accept and we will not accept that these families who lived in this area for centuries, Christian families, that they not can return to the place where is their home, and we will help them to get back there. The Swiss initiative strengthens international law, has a de-escalating effect, and signals that ethnic displacement will not go unchallenged. USA is a long-term proposer of freedom, also religious freedom, democracy, human rights, and peace. And I ask you to help us to put this very important subject also in Nagorno Karabakh. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do have a written statement. It's outside on the table. You can pick it up. But let me try to paraphrase what I've written there as much as I can. I want to be short and not to repeat my colleagues said. You've heard from my colleagues the conditions under which the 150,000 Armenians were displaced from their homeland. But you haven't heard yet that the territory from which they were expulsed was a territory that never been part of Azerbaijan. That was a territory that was inhabited by Armenians, their ancestors, for centuries. And in the past 30 years, the Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians had a full self-rule and a democratic life on that territory. So they were expelled from territory that the only association with Azerbaijan had was during the Soviet time, during which they had a self-rule status. I'm saying this not to dwell on the past, but simply to make a point that today Nagorno-Karabakh's demand and request and appeal to go to their homes is not an illusion. It's based on history, based on law, and based on justice. Having said this, let me also say that Nagorno-Karabakh people and the leadership, they're very pragmatic, they're very realistic. They've come to terms with the new realities on the ground. They recognize the new geopolitical situation, including the new dynamics between Baku and Yerevan. They don't want to go back to the status quo ante by force or illusion. They simply want to go back home. That's their purpose. Whether that would be through a UN or OSCE transitional administration or some other credible mechanism, their focus is on creating conditions that will guarantee their safe and dignified return to their homes. Look, we recognize the United States and the West in general view Azerbaijan as a strict partner on so many levels, from being an alternative energy supplier, as efforts being made to minimize reliance on Russian oil and gas, Azerbaijan being the frontline state in the north of Iran, also Azerbaijan being a partner with Israel on military and intelligence matters. If we add to this geopolitical calculation the fact that Azerbaijan has strong ties with Turkey, a NATO ally, and explicitly defined as one nation, two state relationship, that completes the picture. Yet, these geopolitical considerations, although real, do not justify the silence against the expulsion of 150,000 Armenians from their homeland. This sends the wrong message and sets a very dangerous precedent, because the right of return is not a political concession. The right of return is a legal and moral obligation enshrined in UN conventions and international humanitarian law. Look, right after the Exodus, on, if I'm not mistaken, November 17, 2023, International Court of Justice passed a decision mandating Azerbaijan to secure and guarantee the safe and dignified return of the people of Nagorno Karabakh to their homes. While we know international court of justice does not have enforcing mechanism, but their decision has the moral and political weight. As a consequence and in response to this, the European Parliament passed 2 resolutions in 2024 calling on Azerbaijan to guarantee the safe return of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, and they even went a step further, demanding that Azerbaijan sits around the negotiating table in the presence of the international community so that they negotiate the terms of the return. And subsequently, thanks to these gentlemen's efforts, the Swiss Parliament provided now a mechanism for negotiation, a mechanism where Azerbaijanis and Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians can come together and see how they can create the right conditions for their return. Look, there are some who say the Karabakh case is closed. The Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians must come to terms with this, forget about it, and just move on. This is a very dangerous notion. This undermines the very foundations of international law. This could be a challenge to the international community and the credibility of Western commitment to international law and international norms. ICJ decision provides ample grounds for the United States to take action. If Azerbaijan continues to release the Armenian hostages that are detained unjustly in the prison in Baku, if Azerbaijan continues to threaten Armenia's territorial integrity, if Azerbaijan continues to avoid sitting with the representative of Karabakh Armenians to negotiate their return, I believe the United States should take particular actions such as sanctions and other means against Azerbaijan. And there are plenty of options I believe the United States can take, from conditioning the bilateral ties to Azerbaijan's compliance with international norms, supporting fact-finding missions in Nagorno-Karabakh, demanding, not simply asking kindly, but demanding that Azerbaijan release all the Armenian detainees in Baku. Also maybe appoint a special envoy for this particular conflict. But first and foremost, and the reason we're here in Washington, we believe the United States should lend its political support, its political weight to put behind this Swiss initiative. One of my colleagues said this comes at a no cost to the United States. This is a fantastic opportunity, I believe, so that the forum has been provided if the United States will lend its support to this, and I think this initiative could become a reality. Now let me say a few additional things about the initiative and conclude. Our task now, it's a fact that there's ICJ decision and international law supports the right of return, there's no doubt about it. Azerbaijan is on record saying that Karabakh Armenians can return. Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians whom I meet every day, they want to return. And during these past 2 years that I've been involved in these processes, and I have talked to many representatives of international community, everybody supports the idea of return. So the question that arises today is how, when, and under what conditions. And the Swiss Peace Initiative precisely does this. It provides a table, that's what it does, so that the return, if ever possible one day, will be compatible with the international law in all its forms, human rights law, humanitarian law, and law of non-discrimination, not merely the principle of the territorial integrity. So this is a great opportunity. Look, this peace initiative is not about taking sides. It is not about giving legitimacy to one side over the other. This initiative is simply to provide a space, a neutral space, where the silent voices can be heard, and where Azerbaijani representatives and Nagorno-Karabakh representatives can sit together around the table and find a way forward, a way home. Thank you.
Thank you to our distinguished guests, and thank you all for taking the time to be here today to hear about this important initiative. As our speakers have mentioned, we are at a critical moment right now. There is a very important, unprecedented window of opportunity for the United States to play a pivotal role in advancing what is a very important discussion about the right of return, particularly in the context of Azerbaijan's ongoing destruction of Christian Armenian heritage in Artsakh and the territories that it's captured. Its ongoing destruction of Armenian civilian property, public, private infrastructure in Artsakh, with the explicit intent of denying the Armenian people anything to return to, period. So right now, this is incredibly important, the longevity of the Armenian community of Artsakh, the security of the region to deter and prevent Azerbaijan from making further advances and aggression, rests on our ability to effectively communicate this issue, the right of return, the importance of us resolving this on the world stage. We have now a groundbreaking initiative that has set the stage and the foundation for this work. And we're now asking for the United States to lend its support. We're not asking the United States to lead and initiate anything on its own accord. There is already a structure and a foundation in place. So before we turn to Q&A, I just wanted to flag that on everyone's chairs, and we also have additional material outside for those particularly in House offices, there is a letter circulating right now calling for the United States to support the right of return and to support international mediation efforts, including the Swiss Peace Initiative and anything that may come through the OSCE to, in full bore, support these efforts to secure the right of return, to support dialogue, to support the foundation of a truly just, durable, and dignified peace in the region. So we highly encourage those of you in offices who haven't signed on to the letter yet. We have currently 22 signatures on that letter, and we hope to see that expand before it closes next Friday. We'd really appreciate your time in reviewing that, running it up the chain, and if you have any questions, us at the ANCA staff are more than willing and available to help and provide additional information as you need. With that, we'll turn to Q&A. I will just say that we don't have roving mics, so for those who have questions, if you could please stand up and speak as loudly as you can. We'll get started now, and we will try to keep this to 20 minutes tops if possible. But we do have the room until 5, and there will be opportunities to speak briefly with our dignified guests following the briefing. So we'll start here. Also, please, if you could introduce yourself, your name, and the office that you represent, that would be appreciated as well. Take it away.
I'm Jake Ansara. I'm a member of the Indo-American community, but I've been working with ANCA to bring light of this tragedy to the Hindu community, and we have created bridges there. But my question is, what is Iran's position on this negotiated platform, and will Iran be willing to leverage their position in talks with Americans to give weight to this?
The content of the peace talks that is ongoing between Armenia and Azerbaijan is not known to anyone, even us in Armenia, and that is being kept secret. But from different bits and pieces and announcements, mostly from Azerbaijan, we know what's the content of it. But in addition to what's in that agreement, there are some additional demands that Azeris put forward, and they speak about it out loud, which are totally unacceptable for the Armenian public in general. The government may show some flexibility because their intention is to get this peace agreement signed, but what Azeris are demanding are totally unacceptable to the Armenian people. There's one demand there that really concerns Iran, and that is a corridor that Azeris want to acquire and have total control over it, so that they will have a direct link between Azerbaijan mainland and the exclave called Nakhichevan. That is one of the demands that Azeris have put forward. And in Armenia, we have a serious concern. If we push back on this, they may attempt to get that piece of territory by force. Iran has made very clear to everyone that is the red line. The borders between Armenia and Azerbaijan cannot change. So this is very critical for Iran. But in general, about the right of return and what have you, the rights of the Nagorno Karabakh Armenians, I think we also have the support of the Iranian government as much as I've been hearing from their public statements.
Hi, I have two questions. I'm not gonna mention my congressperson because I don't know if they would back my questions. But my first question was, how will Switzerland and the United States maintain this territory as neutral ground for both the Azerbaijani and Armenian people without resorting to unauthorized or likely unwelcome military presences like seen in the Vietnam War? How will they maintain this area of peace without this unauthorized military presence? Because
Which
you can't just
unauthorized?
bring the people there and
But
then
which
not.
unauthorized military presence?
Any United States military presence, Swiss military presence.
Well, I think there's no need for a military presence. We need the United States political support for this initiative. That's about it. Azerbaijan needs to feel the pressure that this issue is not being closed, it's not concluded. Without the return of 150,000 Armenians to their homes, or at least having that on our agenda, there can't be a durable peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan.
So there's going to be no military presence in bringing the Armenians.
Well, at this stage, there's no need, or maybe even in the future, there won't be need for any. This is going to be a political process. No one is showing any aggressive, posture. And as I said in my statement, Nagorno Karabakh Armenians have no such final design to change anything by using force or getting into some illusion. So this has to be a political process so that their rights will be restored.
And then my second question is, can we hear a little bit about the economic plan? Like, how is Swiss asking the United States for money? Where is this money coming from? A little bit about all of that.
I just say, in connection with what the Swiss government is doing and not doing, right now we're only talking about providing a platform, full stop. There's no broader vision. There's a hope that it would lead to a solution, and maybe there is ultimately some kind of military presence, peacekeeping presence, but that would have to come out from the negotiations. Right now, there's no dialogue at all, zero communication between Azerbaijan and the displaced community in Nagorno Karabakh, from Nagorno Karabakh. We're talking about the first step. There has to be this platform. Switzerland is prepared to offer that platform to get a dialogue going, negotiations going. We don't know where they will go, but a lasting peace can only be achieved as a result of a negotiated peace where both sides feel satisfied to some extent that their most basic security interests are taken into account. There's nothing more to it than that. The Swiss government is not calling for more money. What we are looking for is simply signs of political support, full stop. And then if the United States is prepared to give political support to this process, it will talk to the ambassador here in Washington. There'll be a dialogue about the character of the support. The Swiss would say, we need this from you, or please stay away. The United States should stay away from this. That could be problematic.
Are you looking for like a certain amount of diplomats to go over? How are you guys trying to make sure that the United States don't have like a forceful position in this? Like, how are we going to make sure that like this conversation is between the Azerbaijani people and the Armenian people, and not something between the United States and the Swiss government?
The text of the motion is very clear. This has two sides, Azerbaijan and the representative of Nagorno-Karabakh. This is not between Armenian government and the Azerbaijani government. It is between Azerbaijani government and the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. Here, the Swiss, as was just simply providing the table, so that they cover, and that's where we need Swiss involvement, US involvement, so that we provide that international presence under which the talks can be conducted. And that will give confidence to both sides. First and foremost, Azeris needs to be convinced to come to negotiating table, regardless how they will view the people who are sitting across the table. Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians are ready. I can't speak on their behalf. They're ready to sit and talk with the Azeri government, regardless how the Azerbaijani government view them in terms of their status within or outside Azerbaijan in the future. So they're ready. They simply want to engage in discussion so that they see how they can secure the right conditions for their return.
Thank you so much.
Ambassador Evans, please.
No, here.
I would just like to point out that in this case, I mean, there are other cases, but in this case, this is for Switzerland not a question about money or economics. This is a question about values. And we put a lot of money already there to help humanitarian. And of course, we would love to put the money for organized conferences to bring the people together. But we have no financial interests in this area or in this case, really not.
My name is Evans, John Evans. I was ambassador here, I'll just hold it. Please, sir. Please. I was ambassador to Yerevan a few years ago. I was not a participant in the Minsk group process, but I think the one element from the Minsk group that must be preserved is a sense of what I would call CSCE balance. Now, you have said very little, if anything, today about the role of Russia. In the news, we see that there are new tensions between Russia and Azerbaijan. And it seems to me it might be wise, using your vaunted Swiss neutrality, which is well known all over the world and respected, make a trip also to Moscow. I'm not saying when, because timing is always important, but perhaps during the Swiss chairmanship, when that begins. Switzerland will in any case need to visit Moscow, and perhaps this initiative could be put to the Russians. I think one might have to take out of your presentation the point about increasing US influence in the area. That's not what the Russians want to hear at this point. And I'm not sure it's a good thing for the long-term stability of the region. One has to think about all the players, including Iran, and let's hope that with a passage of some time, Iran will come back. It's not, of course, a member of the OSCE, but it will come back as a player in the region, and it will be a player in the region whether we like it or not. So I like the idea that this is a Swiss initiative. I'm very flattered as a former American diplomat that you have come to Washington, but I also think you should go to Moscow and make a presentation there and make sure that any way ahead is balanced politically. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Next question. I'm Madison, Congressman in the Mass Office. And my main question is, what's the current situation with the Russian peacekeepers, and with that, because the ambassador did mention Russia, and what is their status and the current situation, and if they are still there?
There are no Russian peacekeepers anymore with the exodus of Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh. They left, so there are no peacekeepers. The Russian role now in the region is minimum due to the Ukraine conflict, but still they have a role, and certainly they will continue to play a role. share what the ambassador said, that we need to also engage Russia in this. We do have plans, I must say, Ambassador, that we do a similar trip also to France, another Minsk group member country. So once we conclude that one, then I guess our third stop will be in Moscow, and that would fall under the Swiss OSCE chairmanship period, which will give even more legitimacy to Swiss parliamentarians maybe to pay a visit there.
I'd say that the Swiss Peace Initiative really comes at the right time, because foreign policy is being rethought. There's an openness to explore improving relations with Russia. I have no idea what it will lead to, whether it will be a good thing, a bad thing, but at least there's the possibility of engaging with them. You'll be aware, I'm sure, Ambassador, that it's not been so easy for people, especially NGOs, to even talk to the Russians these days without consequences. Hopefully that is changing, and one will be able to have some kind of dialogue with them, because they are important players in the region. The idea is not, if I was misunderstood, to increase the United States' influence in the region so it dominates the region. I just said that that has been a part of the grand strategy since the end of the Cold War, to increase our presence and influence, and that will probably have to have some limits in time if we're going to look for a really stable region, because we have to deal with Russia, whether you like it or not, other bad actors that we don't like to, and we have to talk to them just as we want the Azerbaijani government to talk to the displaced people. The time of no dialogue should be over. We have to start talking. We don't know where it will lead, but we hope and pray for the best.
Given the entrenched hostilities between the two countries, how would you assess the willingness of the Armenian and Azerbaijani governments to engage in good faith, productive dialogue?
Well, you know, we can't, we know that there is not good, otherwise they'd be talking to each other. So we have to take the first step. There's an offer of a platform. Now we have to speak to, Azerbaijan has to be spoken to and be made aware that there are some consequences if they refuse to talk to those whom they have displaced. If there are no consequences, then nothing will come of this. The United States is in a position to provide consequences that Azerbaijan would have to pay attention to. Switzerland is not able to do so. So part of our mission is to come here first. We've already had some support from the UK parliamentarians, and to go to France and Germany, other important EU countries, so that they send the message that they want, hopefully, a durable, just peace in the region, and that they have to start talking. Otherwise, there will be, say, these consequences. What the consequences should be, I leave it to the diplomats. That's not our business. We're just trying to kickstart a process and see many difficulties in the way. This is not going to be an easy proposition to get through, but we do not, for the sake of the displaced population, and then for the whole region, for it to be again afflicted by war, turmoil, ethnic cleansing in the future for every party, the Armenians, the Azerbaijanis, others that live in that dangerous region on that fault line that is so unstable.
May I ask a follow-up? Thank you. For clarification, you guys had said earlier that the primary objective that you were looking for the United States, the primary input would be political support, but then you mentioned the potential of U.S. enforced consequences. So then maybe long-term then, going beyond political support, what type of consequences would you guys be expecting the United States to provide?
Well, if I can speak to what, as an American, what I would hope the United States would do is withdrawing the kind of support that it has been given to Azerbaijan. It's not necessarily taking special punitive measures, although I do believe that they should be sanctioning not the country, but individuals who were a party to the ethno-religious cleansing. Those, there are commanders, there are intelligence, there are officials that were responsible for that. I personally believe they should be sanctioned. But at the very least, the United States, the President of the United States, as happened not so long ago in the previous administration, should not be photographed smiling with the Azerbaijani foreign minister just days after the ethnic cleansing. We should not be supporting Azerbaijan when it wants to host COP21 events. There are these kinds of really basic things that are hardly punitive, that are really not great punishments, but showing that the United States strongly disapproves and that Azerbaijan cannot do this kind of ethnic religious cleansing with impunity, because it has its eyes on Armenia itself, what it calls West Azerbaijan. It's making threats, open threats, and you can read them in the newspapers. Karabakh is not the end of the story. They are determined to remove this Armenian Christian political entity so that it may keep the name Armenian, but it will have no ability to stand as a sovereign state and make decisions for itself. That's the ultimate goal. And the United States has a choice. Do they go along with that, or do they feel that that's not in the interest of the United States and the stability of the region?
I would like to add something, if I'm allowed. Yeah.
You certainly are.
So, last year in October, I have been the first time in Armenia, and I have spoken to these displaced people and so on. And 1 month ago now, I've been again in Armenia, and I have visited the south. So, here, the south. I've been at the Iranian border here. And I had a driver who spoke English and also, of course, Armenian. And then I had the possibility to talk to people there like that. And I must tell you something. If we now close the eyes and don't do anything about what happened here, that's Nagorno Karabakh. They have been displaced. And this Lachin corridor has been closed. You can't go there anymore. I have been there. There are warnings. If we close the eyes and say, okay, it's okay, we don't have to solve that problem, then this is a bad signal for Azerbaijan, because they see, okay, we can do such things and it has no consequences. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the people here, and also here, they fear the following. They fear that Azerbaijan will get another piece of Armenia. This one, that's the Sangezur corridor. Because they would like to have a direct street from here to here and vice versa. And Turkey want to go that way too. And the people fear that. They say, do something. If you don't do anything, that's the Sangezur corridor here. I just want to bring that in your mind, and I hope that I'm wrong, but if you don't do anything, this Sangezur corridor, you will hear it in the future in a bad way, yes? So it's better when we do it now.
Okay, as we're at 4 o'clock, in the interest of time, and I want to make sure we get through as many as possible, just 2 more questions, and then we will still be in this room. And also, on the page that you have our contact information, legislative@anca.org. So if you have any follow-up questions, we'd be more than happy to answer and provide additional information. But 2 more, starting here.
Yeah. If the Armenians are allowed to return to this region, is the idea that they are going to be politically integrated into Azerbaijan and just have their rights protected? Or is there a desire and a thought that to reach peace, they really need to have local autonomy again.
Well, too early to talk about that kind of an outcome. First, we need to get the two sides to the negotiating table. It's totally up to the Nagorno Karabakh people to decide what their future will look like on that territory. They may start talking and they see the terms are not acceptable to them. They may just quit and forget about it. But our task is now to get them to the negotiating table. Any outcome, is possible from one end to another. It's totally up to the negotiating side. At the end of the day, it's Nagorno Karabakh people that will make that decision.
My name is David Gregorian. I'm a research fellow at Harvard University's Kennedy School and a founder of Policy for Armenia think tank. I want to thank our Swiss colleagues for taking this initiative. For those of us who've been on our barricades since 1988, since the unification movement, this means a lot to us. Thank you. I want to second Minister Oskanian's point that Nagorno Karabakh has never been part of Azerbaijan. But I should go further. In fact, the League of Nations has given Armenia the title over Nagorno Karabakh in 1920. I wonder if you gentlemen are aware of that, and if so, what role is that decision playing in your deliberations? That's my first question. The second question is, the current Armenian government is very much responsible for what's happening in Nagorno-Karabakh now, both in 2020 and 2023, for reasons I think many in this audience are aware of. The question is, is that government supporting your initiative? And if not, why not? I know the answer to that, but I'd like the people to hear your response for the record. And thank you again.
I have to say that the Armenian government has to answer that question. We can't speak for the Armenian government. We can imagine, in the same way that we can, what their reasons are. But we do know, it's simply a fact, that they are under enormous pressure. That, again, this is my personal view, that what is being discussed now between Azerbaijan and Armenia, it's called a peace process, is really a surrender process to finalize the surrender of Armenia, unconditional surrender of Armenia to Azerbaijan and Turkey. One nation, two states. And it's in a bind. And we can criticize, of course, the Armenian government and so on, and I leave it to Armenians to do that. That's not my business. But the fact is, they are acting under duress. That's just the fact. Maybe they could do a better job. That's not my business. But it is an act of surrender that's being played out right now. And they do not have an entirely free hand. And one of the reasons is that they have been abandoned by the entire world. They've been abandoned by their traditional supporter and ally, Russia, which actually helped them in the first war. They're not there anymore at the table. They've been abandoned by the United States. There are no powers that can support them. So they're in an extremely weak position, and we should not have such high expectations of what their role is, and we would not expect them to come out and endorse this peace initiative. I must say that I personally engaged with Armenian diplomats. Nobody has discouraged me, said, don't do this. We understand that the signals that are given. We have not had the door closed. We have not been told that this should not happen. Therefore, we assume that if it's done in a good way and in a good spirit, it will not be opposed. That's our hope. But of course, the diplomats don't make all of the decisions. There could be some kind of decision from high up, just as there is in the United States. There can be decisions from the top that change that. But we operate from the point of CSI, which is assisting the Vartan's committee of Karabakhis and the parliamentarians. We move forward, assuming that this process will help Armenia too, by providing conditions for stability and the region, and that it is not contrary, doesn't undermine, should not undermine in any way whatever discussions there are between Yerevan and Baku about a new peace treaty.
The first question, legal nation.
What was it? Sorry, couldn't you repeat the last
First question, were you aware of the League of Nations
Yes.
1920 decision to give Armenia the title over Nagorno-Karabakh?
Well, you know, I'm certainly aware, and I'm sure that at least.
Yeah, most likely our colleagues from this parliament don't know much history details, but they understand the politics of it, and what they've done, I think, is superb and been very useful. I'm sure they may do further reading, have more information about the history of Artsakh. What you mentioned is a historical fact that strengthens the legal arguments. But we got to come, to terms with the fact that this is more of a political process rather than a legal one. Legal arguments substantiate our political positions, but yet at the end of the day, it's going to be a political decision. And what the Swiss parliamentarians have done, they've taken a political decision by adopting that motion, and now we expect to get international support that we put this in motion.
With that, we will close for Q&A, but I will invite, after this session is finished, please feel free to come and speak to our honored guests. I want to express thanks and our gratitude to the delegation for making the way to DC. Thank you to all of you for making the time to be here. Again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Please take those pamphlets with you, and we'd appreciate any support on the letter, and we look forward to keeping in touch. Thank you for coming.